Family Guy as a show has given us some pretty fantastic Christmas episodes in the past, with one of my absolute favourites being Season 9's Road to the North Pole. This is when Stewie hunts down Santa in order to kill him, only to realise that he's dying anyway. So to save Christmas, Stewie teams up with Brian to take Santa's place, only for things to go terribly, terribly wrong.
It's okay. Brian, see if you can find some duct tape.
Honestly, it's absolutely hilarious and really is one of the best episodes that Family Guy has ever done. But flash forward to now in season 22, and I have to say that this year's Christmas special might just be the very worst they've ever done. Why is it so bad? Well, let's get into it. The episode opens with the family decorating the Christmas tree, and when Peter sits down to watch the Frosty the Snowman special, he finds out that his TV is gone. Lois explains that she sold it to buy more Christmas presents, and also that they don't really need it anyway because everyone streams from their own devices now.
A single TV console is outdated. Everyone just streams now on their individual devices.
Now, I thought this was kind of weird. Why would Lois just sell the TV to buy more presents when she knows that Peter uses it all of the time? And I don't know about you lot, but I pretty much only watch Netflix and Disney Plus through my TV. To me, it just seemed like a lazy excuse to move the plot along, which it did, and Peter was pissed, especially when Meg joined in.
Sorry, just demonstrating I'm still relevant by making a very old movie reference.
I have to admit that at the time while watching it, I had no idea what this scene was trying to reference, but after some digging, I found out that it was based on Braveheart, which was a bit of a random reference seeing as Braveheart doesn't regularly play on TV, and as such, we wouldn't really expect it to be on Peter's mind at that very moment. But hey, at least the writers thought it was funny as they'll continue to repeat this joke 2 times more in the episode. Peter then complains to Lois that he can't watch his favourite shows like Chicago Fire.
Who cares? It's a lazy formulaic show and it's not even filmed in Chicago.
Which, actually isn't true at all. Chicago Fire is literally filmed in Chicago. Look, I know I'm being very pedantic here, but they are literally dunking on a show for being lazy and not filming where it's supposed to be set when that's not even the case at all, and it's lazy in itself by not really doing the fact checking here. Anywho, Peter goes to the Drunken Clam and complains about the TV situation to his friends. His friends then try to convince him that streaming isn't really that bad by recommending some very good TV shows.
Broadchurch, that isn't about a person attempting to navigate life in a small town in the aftermath of a murder.
And speaking of show recommendations, I've completely run out of things to watch in the evenings. I've just finished my 10th rewatch of The Office, Friends, Gilmore Girls, and Modern Family. So any recommendations of your favourite shows down in the comments below would be very much appreciated. Back to the episode, and Peter gives in and decides to give streaming a go. And when he resets his Netflix password, he has to type in the name of his favourite pet, who is Bartholomew.
Bartholomew, I'm dancing with my favorite dog, Bartholomew.
They must have thought that this joke was really funny too, because they bring it back by the end. Nonetheless, they get a knock at the door, which turns out to be actor Kevin James.
You were my last viewer, and now that you've gotten rid of network TV, I'm out of a job.
This scenario of Peter opening the door to someone completely random is such a Family Guy cliche that has literally become a meme. And no, before you ask, that is not Kevin James doing the voice. Which I did think was kind of a weird decision because it's not rare for Family Guy to have actors come on to cameo as themselves.
The cast of Star Trek The Next Generation is here to answer my questions!
What the hell? Where am I?
What's going on?
I mean, this started all the way back in season 2 with Luke Perry.
Meg Griffin, you are so sued.
As well as the most well-known example, James Woods, who first appeared as himself in season 4 and would then continue to have a reoccurring role.
Ooh, a piece of candy. Ooh, a piece of candy. Ooh, a piece of candy.
Even Hollywood A-lister Ryan Reynolds voiced himself.
Hey Ryan, bad time?
Perfect time. Come on in, I was just oiling my legs.
As did Bryan Cranston and Liam Neeson.
I hear you've been all over town saying you could kick my arse. Well, there's no time like the present.
It's also really nice when an actor is willing to laugh at themselves and be made fun of in a show like Family Guy. So it just baffles me why they didn't get Kevin James to voice himself here. It could be that they just didn't bother asking him, or Kevin point blank refused. But if it was actually Kevin James voicing himself, then maybe this episode would have worked a bit better. Instead, the person who did voice him didn't sound like him at all.
I was the single most bankable comedy actor of the last 2 decades.
Nevertheless, Peter lets Kevin stay, and at first, Lois isn't very happy about it, but Peter assures her that according to sitcom rules, if an unannounced guest turns up at your door, then you have to let them stay. She then asks Peter to give her 50 examples, and yes, he actually gives her 50 examples, and no, it wasn't funny. To make things even worse, I actually groaned out loud when Lois asked for 50 more examples. But thankfully, they then just cut to Lois pretending to unalive herself.
No, that's from Airplane. We do that kind of stuff too. You can stay.
This joke was painfully long, and I've never really been a big fan of these overly stretched out jokes, like the Conway Twitty cutaways or the scraping of the knee joke.
Ah!
And the worst example I can think of is when they played the David Bowie and Mick Jagger video in its entirety. In my eyes, they are simply lazy, drawn-out jokes only to exist to pad out the runtime. Also, Kevin James's arrival was the very point where this episode stopped being a Christmas episode. Until the very ending, that is. But yes, the center of the episode basically focuses on Peter trying to help Kevin James by showing him how to be a real guy instead of being a sitcom guy. And no, none of this leads into any interesting or funny moments, and I did actually forget what happened here, so I had to rewatch it to refresh my memory. And in this rewatch, I saw that Kevin James gets a job as a UPS driver, which was the occupation that his character had on King of Queens. And just when it looks like things are finally going well for James, his arm starts disappearing. This is because with no TV show and no one paying any attention to him, you start to lose your relevancy and start to fade away. And the only way to save him is the audience's laughter. So Peter gets him to act in a nativity scene in front of the entire town. And at first, no one is interested until he starts falling over. And then he starts telling some crappy jokes, which leads into everyone applauding and laughing. So now that sitcom humour is funny again, old TV stars start reappearing from a cornfield, like Janet Elfman, Tony Danza, and Trailer Howard, who Peter throws out of the castle window. This wasn't funny the first time, the second time, and it definitely wasn't funny here. Anyway, the episode ends with Kevin James getting an agent before ascending to the heavens and disappearing. Peter and Lois then embrace as she thinks about another one of their dogs. Again, what is the joke here? Why is that supposed to be funny? I don't know what's going on. And look, I've got nothing against Kevin James here, but his appearance here in this episode really felt very dated. I mean, Kevin James's last TV series ended in 2018. That was 4 years ago. No, 5 years ago. I guess that's the joke. Maybe. I don't know. But I don't want to be all negative though, because there were a few decent jokes here. Like when Peter shows Kevin how to pay his taxes, which consisted of calling up his father-in-law begging for him to pay his bills.
Stop threatening me. It's not a threat if I do it. It's not a threat if I do it. Okay, I'll pay it.
And also when Peter sold Lois's diaphragm thinking it was a Jewish yarmulke.
Well, Mort's gonna have a rough day at Temple.
I also did laugh at that Gap cutaway joke.
The Gap, the only clothing store named for a taint.
And the Florida cutaway was also pretty funny too, but I do think that Family Guy really do overdo the jokes about Florida people being trashy and dumb. They've done it a million times before and it's just getting pretty old now.
Everyone from Florida is dumb.
At the end of the day, I would hazard to even call this a Christmas episode. Aside from the snow, the Christmas decorations, the tree, and that scene at the very end, this really has nothing to do with Christmas. It was like they randomly had this Kevin James script written out, realised it was about to air close to Christmas, and then threw some snow and tinsel in the background and call it a day. Merry Christmas. And look, I hate being negative, I really do want to like these new episodes, but I've got to be honest when doing these reviews and give my honest thoughts, and unfortunately, this season so far has been pretty poor. Especially when you compare this show to shows like American Dad and The Simpsons, who are really putting out some fantastic new episodes. And to sum up, from the repetitive bad jokes, boring Kevin James, and the fact that it's hardly a Christmas episode, it just felt far too lazy and a filler for the season. It's a real shame because a good holiday episode has the capability of being replayed year after year, but that can't be said for this one. I was really close to giving this episode just 1 star, but I didn't completely hate it because I did like those few jokes I mentioned earlier, so for that reason, I'll round it up to 2 stars out of 5.